Welcome, gents. Some men don't raise their voice when they've had enough, they just change the rules and walk away. There's a line every Sigma male reaches quietly. No fireworks, no dramatic announcements, just a silent shift in how he moves, thinks, and deals with people. Being nice was never about being weak. It was a choice, a way of giving others the benefit of the doubt. But once that line is crossed, he doesn't go back. And what comes next is something most people never see coming. You see, Sigma males aren't built to fake things. Their kindness was real, their patience deep. But when they stop being nice, it means the game has changed. They're no longer trying to be understood. They're done making room for people who bring confusion, disrespect, or drama. And they don't need to yell to prove it. They simply vanish from the nonsense and move with cold precision. If you're a Sigma male, know this: your shift isn't a downfall. It's a rise. You've spent years putting others first, staying quiet to keep the peace, offering chances to people who didn't deserve them. But now, your silence has weight. Your decisions have finality, and your boundaries are no longer suggestions, they're facts. This version of you isn't cruel, it's awake, it's grounded, and it's necessary, because sometimes to protect your peace, you have to stop being nice and start being real. And when a Sigma male gets real, the whole room feels it, even if he never says a word. Let's get started, gents. Number 1, he becomes surgical with his energy. When a Sigma male stops being nice, the first thing that changes is how he spends his energy. It's no longer scattered. It becomes focused, deliberate, and razor sharp. He used to give freely his time, his attention, his advice, not because he was trying to impress anyone, but because he believed in doing good without expecting anything back. But over time, life teaches him something harsh. Most people take without giving, ask without thinking, and drain without caring. So now he cuts through all of that. He doesn't waste his energy on shallow conversations or meaningless obligations. He doesn't entertain people who only show up when they need something. He's done playing emotional caretaker to those who never bothered to check on him. The old him might have smiled just to keep the peace. The new him lets the silence speak for itself. Every choice he makes is filtered through one question: is this worth my energy? And if the answer is no, he walks away without guilt or explanation. There are no more casual handouts, no more just being nice because it's expected. His time and presence become earned, not given out like samples in a store. He's not bitter, he's precise. There's a difference. People might say he changed, and they're right. He did. But what they really mean is that they no longer benefit from his softness. Now, he operates like a surgeon: clean cuts, clear decisions, no wasted motion. And if you're still in his circle, understand this: you're not there by accident. You're there because you proved you belong. Everyone else cut off, clean and silent. That's what happens when a Sigma male gets serious about his energy. He doesn't make noise, he makes moves, and each one has a purpose. Number 2, he stops cushioning the truth. When a Sigma male stops being nice, one of the first things to go is the filter. He stops cushioning the truth. No more sugarcoating, no more trying to make hard things easier for people to swallow. If it's true, he'll say it. And if it stings, that's your business, not his. See, for a long time he held back, not out of fear, but out of respect. He didn't speak up just to be right. He stayed silent because he knew most people weren't ready to hear the real story, especially when it was about themselves. He watched people make the same mistakes, chase the same lies, repeat the same patterns. He knew the truth, but he also knew the weight it carried. So he kept it to himself. But something shifts when he stops being nice. He no longer protects people from their own reflection. He stops holding the mirror at just the right angle so they don't see the full picture. Now he holds it up straight, and whatever it shows, it shows. People start feeling uncomfortable around him, not because he's cruel, but because he no longer gives them space to hide. His words are clean, precise, no fluff. If something doesn't make sense, he'll call it out. If someone's playing games, he'll say so, not to embarrass them, but to clear the fog. This version of him speaks with power. His silence used to be a safety net. Now his voice is a scalpel. He doesn't shout. He doesn't lecture. He just says exactly what others pretend not to see. And suddenly things shift. People start choosing their words carefully around him. They start thinking twice before lying or pretending. Because deep down they know this man doesn't play nice anymore. He plays real. And real always wins, even when it hurts. Number 3, he turns his intelligence into armor. There was a time when the Sigma male used his mind as a bridge to connect, to support, to understand people deeply. He would listen not just to respond, but to feel where someone was coming from. That sharp, intuitive mind was open, generous, and full of insights he was willing to share. He thought that by helping others see more clearly, he was doing the right thing. But over time, he learned something brutal. Most people don't want depth. They want comfort. They don't value real insight until it benefits them. And once his intelligence made them uncomfortable, they either dismissed it or used it against him. That's when everything changed. Now, that same brilliant mind has become a fortress. It no longer reaches outward. It folds inward and becomes armor. He doesn't explain his thoughts anymore. He keeps his plans to himself. He lets people assume whatever they want because their understanding is no longer his concern. Every decision he makes now is carefully filtered. Every word he speaks is chosen with purpose. He watches, he listens, but he rarely reveals. The man who used to open doors for people now quietly locks them, not out of anger, but because he knows what his openness once cost him. He's still deeply intelligent, he's still 10 steps ahead, but now that intelligence is wrapped in silence. He doesn't offer warnings, he doesn't offer guidance. If someone walks into chaos, that's on them. His mind is no longer something people get to explore, it's something they experience when he chooses. That shift is subtle but powerful. It's the difference between being open and being unbreakable. He didn't lose his empathy, he just decided to protect it. And now his intelligence doesn't just guide him, it shields him, quietly, ruthlessly, and completely. Number 4, he withdraws his forgiveness like a currency. There was a time when a Sigma male would forgive without much hesitation, not because he wasn't hurt, not because it didn't matter, but because he believed in moving forward, not holding grudges. He figured people made mistakes and holding on to resentment only poisoned the mind. So he let things slide. He gave people grace, again and again. But somewhere along the way he realized something painful. People weren't learning from his forgiveness. They were expecting it. They started treating his patience like a loophole. They'd say sorry, promise change, and then repeat the same behavior. And every time he forgave too easily, he was teaching them that there were no real consequences, so he stopped. He started treating forgiveness like something rare, like something valuable. Not just a word he handed out to calm the room or keep people comfortable, but something that had to be earned. Now, forgiveness is no longer about keeping the peace. It's about finding his own. If something still feels wrong in his chest, if the wound is still open, if the person who caused it is still playing games, he doesn't hand out forgiveness just to feel noble. He waits, or he walks. And if that means people say he's changed, so be it. He has changed. Forgiveness for him now isn't about being a bigger person, it's about being an honest one. If the pain taught him a lesson, he keeps the lesson. He doesn't sweep it under a smile, and when he finally does forgive, it's not because someone begged for it. It's because he has truly made peace with what happened on his own terms. That's the difference. It's not about them anymore, it's about him. And when forgiveness becomes rare, people start thinking twice about breaking him again. Number 5, his presence becomes unreachable. When a Sigma male stops being nice, he doesn't just step back. He vanishes in a way that feels spiritual, not in anger, not in drama, just silence, clean, cold, and complete. One day you could feel his presence in a room without him even speaking. The next, it's like he's no longer in the same world. And that's not by accident. He doesn't leave a trail. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't offer closure, because he understands something most people don't. Closure isn't owed, it's earned. And if someone pushed him far enough to shut off, chances are they lost the right to that explanation. But this isn't about disappearing physically. It's emotional, it's psychological. You could be standing next to him and still feel like he's a million miles away. He stops letting people into his thoughts. He stops letting them feel his warmth. The man who once paid attention to every detail about you now barely reacts, not to hurt you, but to protect himself. He's not cold-hearted. He's just tired of being accessible to people who didn't respect the access. His presence becomes sacred. You can't call him up with an apology and expect him to return to the old version of himself. That version is gone. You'll feel it in your chest, the weight of his absence, even when he's right in front of you. And that's the hardest part. You don't just miss his company, you miss his depth, the way he made you feel seen, the way he always knew what you didn't say, that rare, calm energy that made everything feel grounded. When that disappears, there's no replacing it. Once a Sigma male becomes unreachable, understand this, it wasn't a mood, it was a decision. And when he decides to disappear, you don't chase him back. You learn why he left. Number 6, he stops playing along with emotional guilt. A Sigma male used to give people the benefit of the doubt. He thought maybe they didn't mean to guilt trip him. Maybe they were just hurt, just emotional, just having a bad day. So he listened. He gave space. He tried to meet people halfway. Even when their words were laced with manipulation, he tried to reason through it. But after a while, something clicks. He starts seeing the pattern. How some people twist situations just to shift the blame, how they cry at the exact moment they lose control, how they weaponize feelings to get their way, and how the guilt always lands on him, even when he did nothing wrong. So now he's done playing along. He doesn't get drawn into emotional chess matches anymore. Tears don't move him unless they're real. Silence doesn't make him chase. Accusations don't make him defend what he knows is true. He doesn't explode. He doesn't argue. He just goes still. That kind of stillness is dangerous because it means you've lost your influence. He's no longer available for guilt games. His decisions are rooted in reason, not emotional noise. If what you're saying doesn't make sense, he tunes it out. And no, he doesn't feel bad about it. People who used to control him with passive aggression or emotional pressure find themselves hitting a wall. He doesn't flinch, he doesn't respond, he just watches quietly and then makes his move, calm, calculated, final. He no longer negotiates with nonsense. His peace is too expensive to trade for someone else's chaos. And if walking away makes him the villain in someone else's story, he's fine with that. He's not cold, he's just not falling for the same old tricks. Not anymore. Number 7, he becomes indifferent, not angry. Anger is loud. Anger fights back. Anger still cares enough to react. That's why when a Sigma male is angry, there's still hope. It means something inside him still values the connection enough to respond. But when he goes quiet, truly quiet, you're in different territory now. Because indifference is where he becomes untouchable. See, most people are used to pushing buttons. They provoke, they guilt trip, they create drama just to get some kind of emotional response. They think that if he raises his voice or gets defensive, they still have influence over him. But the moment a Sigma male becomes indifferent, it's game over. Not because he's bitter, because he's finished. Indifference doesn't slam doors, it just walks out of them and never looks back. It doesn't need to argue or prove anything, it simply says, this no longer matters, and means it. And once he no longer cares, nothing you say will reach him. Not apologies, not memories, not even tears. This is not a tantrum, it's not a moment, it's a state. He emotionally disconnects at the root. And the scariest part, he won't explain it. You'll just feel it in the way he no longer asks questions, no longer looks your way, no longer shows up with his usual calm presence. He's not trying to punish you, he's protecting himself. And if you ever get to this version of him, the one who feels nothing, expects nothing, gives nothing, you've lost him in the deepest way possible. That's the dark truth. Sigma males don't burn bridges, they let them rot. Quietly. And by the time you realize what his silence really meant, he's already somewhere else, detached, at peace, and completely indifferent. Number 8, he stops saving everyone and starts choosing himself. There was a point in his life when the Sigma male tried to carry too much. He felt responsible for fixing things, for helping people heal, for holding relationships together, for being the calm voice in chaos. He stepped in quietly without asking for anything in return. Not because he wanted praise, but because it felt right. He thought his presence could save people from themselves. But after a while, he starts to feel it. The weight. The exhaustion of pouring into people who only take. The frustration of investing in others while his own goals collect dust. The quiet anger of realizing that being the strong one just made him everyone's crutch. And that's when something shifts. He stops jumping into sinking ships. Not because he's heartless, but because he finally understands this. You cannot save people who are committed to staying lost. You can hand someone a map, but you can't make them walk. He's done draining himself for people who won't even pick up a bucket. Now he chooses himself, not selfishly, strategically. He starts focusing on what he's building, his peace, his vision, his legacy. He stops apologizing for putting himself first. He becomes the man who shows up for his purpose, not everyone else's problems. People might say he changed. The truth is, he evolved. The same man who used to rescue others is now building something no one else can touch. An inner empire, a life he doesn't need to escape from. And if you ask him why he stopped saving people, he'll tell you this. I realized I was drowning while trying to keep everyone else afloat. I chose to swim to shore, and now I'm building something solid on dry land. That's what happens when a Sigma male wakes up. He stops saving everyone and starts saving himself. Number 9, he prioritizes logic over compassion. There was a time when a Sigma male would pause before making a decision, not to think it through logically, but to ask himself, how will this make them feel? He wasn't trying to be a people pleaser, but he didn't like hurting anyone, even when they deserved it. He carried a quiet kind of compassion, the kind that forgave easily and made space for others' mistakes. But over time, compassion without balance started to cost him. He realized that while he was weighing people's feelings, they weren't doing the same for him. They used his empathy like a loophole, knowing he would bend, that he would try to understand, that he wouldn't cut them off so quickly. Eventually, he stopped using emotions as a compass. Now, everything runs through logic first. What is this costing him? Does it align with his values? Is it draining or fueling his mission? He no longer makes decisions based on guilt or obligation. His kindness hasn't disappeared, it's just no longer for sale. This shift doesn't make him cold, it makes him clear. He doesn't get pulled into emotional messes just because someone is uncomfortable. If your presence is more chaotic than helpful, he'll quietly remove you from his space. If your energy doesn't match your words, he sees it immediately and steps back without a speech. He's not heartless. He's just done ignoring red flags in the name of being nice. These days, he trusts logic over sentiment. He knows that feelings can lie, but patterns don't. He would rather be misunderstood for protecting his peace than praised for sacrificing it, and if that means people call him distant or cold, so be it. He's not here to be soft for people who never softened for him. He's here to move with purpose, and logic keeps him on that path. Number 10, he becomes immune to pleas and promises. Sigma males don't just listen to words, they watch behavior. And after enough letdowns, enough apologies that turned into reruns, enough promises that meant nothing in the end, he stops being moved by what people say. He becomes immune to emotional begging and empty commitments. Not because he's cruel, but because he's done pretending words are enough. See, the Sigma male has a high tolerance for pain. He'll give you chances long after most would have walked away. Not because he's blind, but because he hopes you'll get it. He hopes you'll change before he decides you're not worth the effort. But once that line is crossed, and you've shown him that your actions don't match your words, there's no going back. At that point, your apology is just noise. Your crying, your guilt, your promises to do better, none of it moves him anymore. Not because he hates you, not because he's hardened, but because he finally believes your behavior. That's the difference. When people start begging once the consequences hit, he sees it for what it is. Regret, not change. Panic, not growth. He doesn't want the version of you that shows up when things fall apart. He wanted the version of you that could be consistent when things were calm. And since that person never showed up, he's gone. Now he judges everything by consistency. You either match your words or your words mean nothing. No more exceptions, no more listening to speeches filled with promises. He doesn't need poetry, he needs proof. When a Sigma male reaches this point, he becomes untouchable in the best way. He's no longer tricked by emotion, swayed by timing, or softened by guilt. He doesn't want better talk. He wants better truth. And if you didn't show him that when it mattered, he's already on his way out. Quiet, certain, unreachable. Number 11, he channels his darkness into power. When a Sigma male stops being nice, people expect him to become cold, distant, or maybe even reckless. But that's not how he moves. He doesn't spiral. He doesn't self-destruct. Instead, something much more powerful happens. He turns inward and begins to work with a part of himself most people run from, his darkness. Everyone has a shadow side, the pain, the anger, the disappointment, the things they never talk about. Most people either ignore it or let it eat them alive. But a Sigma male, he studies it, he listens to it, and eventually he figures out how to use it. The parts of him that once made him quiet in rooms full of noise, the bitterness he felt from being taken for granted, the sharp anger that used to boil beneath the surface, all of that gets redirected, not into revenge, not into chaos, but into focus, into fire, into unmatched clarity. He no longer tries to be understood. He no longer explains his silence or softens his tone to keep the peace. He stops wearing his kindness like armor and starts using his intensity like a weapon, but only when it's necessary. The darkness in him doesn't consume, it creates, it drives, it cuts through nonsense and mediocrity like a blade. This is where he becomes unstoppable. He doesn't run from his wounds, he builds from them. His trauma becomes training, his solitude becomes strategy. His silence becomes a signal that something greater is in motion. People who thought his quietness was weakness now feel the shift. His energy changes, his moves are different. He's not trying to be liked, he's building something that doesn't need approval. That's the dark truth. When niceness leaves, the shadow steps in. But for the Sigma male, it doesn't bring destruction, it brings power, precision, and a version of him that no one is prepared for. In final words, the man you thought would always stay calm, always forgive, always listen, he's not gone, he just evolved. When a Sigma male stops being nice, it is not a breakdown, it is a quiet revolution, one that happens not with shouting but with silence, not with revenge but with clarity. He doesn't become cruel, he becomes precise, and that shift changes everything. The truth is, his kindness was never weakness, it was a choice, a discipline, a quiet strength that most people didn't understand. But too many took it as permission to take advantage, to drain him, to mistake his calm for compliance. And now that door is closed. If you are a Sigma male, understand this. You're not broken for walking away. You're not cold for choosing peace over chaos. You're not heartless for refusing to carry people who never asked how much you were already carrying. You're becoming the version of yourself that honors your time, your mind, and your energy. Your evolution is not about becoming feared, it's about becoming clear. It's about choosing yourself without shame. You're no longer here to rescue people who were comfortable watching you drown. You're here to build something unshakable, starting with yourself. So no, you are not too much. You're just no longer available for anything that waters down your power. And if they say you've changed, tell them this: I didn't change, I just stopped pretending that your comfort was more important than my peace. Keep rising, keep watching, keep building. You weren't made to fit in, you were made to stand alone and stand tall. Thank you for watching, gents, and God bless you.